The week's end top stories at NBR. Government announcement on plans for partially tunnelled light rail, described as a massive kick in the teeth. Crowdfunding platform reveals it's in breach of its licence and will need to raise money. Sky City expected to post a first half loss, and there's more coming right up. Kia ora and welcome to NBR This Week, the latest business stories from the authority in New Zealand business news since 1970, nbr.co.nz, and a look back over the week's top stories from our daily video business news bulletin, NBR Today. It's Friday, January 28th. I'm Paul Brennan. Thanks again for joining us. The Australian equity crowdfunding platform, pinged by the Financial Markets Authority last year for failing to file its financial statements, has revealed it's in breach of its licence and will need to raise money. Last July, the FMA issued an infringement notice to Equitise, which has been licensed by the regulator as an equity crowdfunding service provider since late 2014. This was because it had failed to file audited financial statements for the year ended June 30, 2020. Those financial statements were finally published to the company's office last September, revealing the firm had $221,000 in net liabilities. And on Thursday, the company published its audited financial statements for the year ended June 30, 2021. Those revealed its statement of financial position had improved, but that it still had net liabilities of $60,000, again casting uncertainty over its operations. A My Food Bag director has bought $172,000 worth of shares in the company, more than doubling a private holding he has in the business. The company last March became the country's largest NZX listing since 2014, when it listed at $1.85 a share, valuing it at $449 million. Its share price, which has been the subject of much criticism from shareholders, has struggled since listing, however, down 39% on its listing price at $1.13 Friday. Also on Friday, a notice to the NZX said that an entity linked to director Chris Marshall had acquired $172,000 of shares in the company in an on-market transaction priced at $1.12 a share. Crimson Consulting has come under legal challenge again, this time from CampusLink founder and New Zealander of the Year finalist Anne Gaze. Gaze has filed a case in the High Court at Auckland, with a first call hearing due March 29th. Gaze referred NBR's questions to her lawyer, Mark Kirkland, who confirmed High Court proceedings have been filed against Crimson Consulting and one of its directors, but declined to comment further. Crimson founder Jamie Beaton told NBR that Crimson will vigorously defend this 5-year-old vexatious case. Beaton was 18 when in 2014 he co-founded the company, which provides tutoring and advice to students seeking university admission. Investment and advisory firm Jarden expects Sky City to post a first-half loss of $24 million in response to Auckland's 110-day Delta lockdown. The casino operator will release its results for the 6 months ended December 31st on February 14, and as previously said, the government-mandated closures resulted in $1 million in lost earnings daily. Sky City was closed for 19 days in its previous first half, for which it posted a first-half profit of $78.4 million. The High Court has ordered expat businessman George Kerr to pay indemnity costs of $102,459 to receivers of his company Pine Holdings after they took legal action to enforce disclosure orders. Indemnity costs are awarded if a party has ignored or disobeyed a court order and can represent the actual legal costs incurred rather than the lesser scale costs of a standard award. In a judgment issued on January 19, Justice Gerard Van Bohemen noted receivers Neil Jackson and Natalie Burrett of Calibre Partners had won court orders in May and June last year requiring Kerr to provide documents and information about Pine Holdings and its debt of $67.7 million to BNZ. The full details of those stories and more are at nbr.co.nz right now. I'm Paul Brennan. This is NBR This Week. A look back now at the week's top NBR business stories. From Monday, the Law Society seeks a review. An unsatisfactory conduct finding against a former law firm partner who inappropriately touched 2 female colleagues will be reviewed after a rare New Zealand Law Society appeal against its own Standards Committee, with the Society pushing for the case to go to a disciplinary tribunal. Last June, an unsatisfactory conduct finding was made against a law firm partner whose name and workplace are confidential, following incidents that occurred between him and 2 female colleagues during work-related social functions. The partner, dubbed AP, was fined $4,000 and ordered to pay costs of $3,000, as well as paying compensation of $4,000 to each of the colleagues. The New Zealand Law Society applied to review that determination, saying the lawyer's conduct raised the spectre of misconduct and ought to be referred to the New Zealand Lawyers and Conveyancers Disciplinary Tribunal. It's NBR This Week, the week's top 5 business stories from NBR's daily video news bulletin, NBR Today. From Tuesday, employment stoush, a wake-up call. The tide race for attention and a shrinking pool of advertising dollars among the country's top media companies lies behind Discovery's quest to ensure Tova O'Brien honoured her employment contract with the company to the letter, legal and media commentators say. Monday, the Employment Relations Authority found largely in favour of Discovery when it ordered the former Newshub political editor to pay $2,000 for breaches of her employment agreement in not adhering to a 3-month restraint of trade with the company. While the ERA ruled O'Brien should have adhered to the restraint of trade clause, it also modified the 3-month restraint by 5 weeks to 7, meaning she is free to begin her new role hosting the morning show at Talk FM on March 14th. She will be competing against time slot king Mike Hosking on ZB and eventually new entrant Sean Plunkett on the platform in that slot. This is NBR This Week, our top NBR Today stories from the past week. And from Wednesday, the value of Villa Maria Estate. Villa Maria Estate was valued at $190 million in the receivership sale of its holding company to Marlborough Wine Company in Devon last August, the latest receivers report says. Meanwhile, receivers Calibre Partners say 2 legal claims brought against them by the winery's founder, Sir George Fistenich, will be vigorously defended. The winery had in November 2020 said it was selling surplus land around its Auckland headquarters and looking to raise capital to fund growth plans. But last May, Brendan Gibson and Neil Jackson of Calibre Partners were appointed receivers to FFWL Limited, the 100% shareholder of the Villa Maria Estate, to bring the process to a close. FFWL was owned by the winery's founder and last July was revealed to owe banks close to $212 million. The receivership did not affect Villa Maria's ongoing business or its overseas subsidiaries. It's NBR This Week, the week's top 5 business stories from NBR's daily video news bulletin, NBR Today. From Thursday, more help could be on the way for Omicron-affected businesses. Finance Minister Grant Robertson has signalled there will be more targeted support for those sectors worst affected by the COVID-19 Omicron outbreak. But just what form that will take is still unclear. Grant Robertson joined NBR political editor Brent Edwards.
One of the things that we have said is we will monitor, and we are monitoring on a daily basis as we can, the impact of the red light setting. And we have indicated that should we see some severe impacts, that we will look at targeted support.
Finance Minister Grant Robertson with Brent Edwards there. This is NBR This Week. Now we're up to Friday's top story. A massive kick in the teeth is how the Heart of the City chief executive is describing Friday's announcement by the government on plans for a partially tunnelled light rail for Auckland. The plans were laid out on Friday morning at the same time as roughly 200 businesses were overdue a decision on an independent body to oversee possibly more reparation for business owners affected by the city rail link. That project has been so disruptive it's driven some affected owners to consider suicide, Heart of the City's Viv Beck said. The CRL affected business owners are understood to be following with interest a class action being taken by more than 60 businesses in Sydney, seeking compensation over disruption caused by that city's light rail project. Beck said the council and the government would only have themselves to blame if anything similar should eventuate this side of the Tasman. And the full details of those stories and more are at nbr.co.nz right now. This weekend at NBR, In Fact or Fiction on Saturday, Brent Edwards and Grant Walker discuss inflation and the polling bump for National. While on Sunday, in his weekly book review, Neville Gibson looks at a hedge fund manager's prescription for why nations rise and fall. I'm Paul Brennan. Thanks for watching and listening to NBR This Week. Have a great weekend.